This episode of the Cult Popture podcast was brought to you by our Patreon. If you want to tell us which films we should watch, get up to 2 extra exclusive podcasts a month, give us something to talk about in the post-credit scenes at the end of each episode, or even contribute to the discussion in the episode itself, then please consider joining the cult and donating at www.patreon.com/cultpopture. Hello and welcome to the Cult Popture podcast. This is the end of our Oscars cheat sheet, which normally, if we do something post-ceremony or more than a few days after the ceremony, it's like the Oscars. Was that this year? I've already forgotten about them. But fortunately for us, the incident, as it's heretofore known, has actually kept the discussion in the generals in our mouths and all in the public's mouths. And we're not going to be talking about that today, though. But it is good that people are still talking about the Oscars.
I think this is still a subject that could exist outside of Oscar conversation. It's more we're riding the curtails into it, I think.
Yes, so today we're talking about what is the best acting? And that might be a strange question to ask, but that's why we've brought in our actor/friend, Aaron Richardson.
I'm so glad that because this is a post-Oscars podcast that I can continue to maintain the title of actor/friend.
I also think because you had the benefit of starring in a mini-series that we did, which we've never really done before, I think this might be the most amount of episodes in a row that a sometimes host has appeared on the podcast. So congratulations.
Would you say that I won the Oscar of
most the award for most acting? Just it goes to Bruce Willis for 2021 just because he was in like 6 films.
Did you hear about the Razzies thing with that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
they made an award at the Razzies this year, which was like the worst Bruce Willis movie, and then it came out in the last week that he's retiring from acting from like
aphasia,
and. So the Razzies were like, all right.
Well, now we feel bad.
Yeah, we rescind our awards as if that means anything. Oh, okay, you don't have the Razzies anymore.
Also, it wasn't mentioned up top, but I'm Richard, and also, obviously, as always, joined by AJ, and we've introduced Aaron. Today we're going to be talking about what's the best acting, and maybe we'll bring you back, Aaron, for what's the best friendship. Something you're equally qualified to talk about.
What's the best guest hosting?
I thought you were going to say, what's the worst acting? Now, there's a podcast that sounds mean-spirited.
This is definitively the worst acting. But then, I don't know, I guess you'd have to have a sort of caveat of like best acting in a professional role or best acting in a movie that had like a release. Otherwise, it's like definitely just the children I saw acting.
Well, that's the thing. It would still end up just bullying children.
The worst acting I've seen was a year 13 play that I was made to go to when I was in my mid-20s. That's what I nominate for the worst acting I've ever seen.
I went to go see, after I left high school, I went to go see my old high school did a Batman play that was one of the guys wrote it, and he played Alfred, and he just wrote this Batman play, and it was insane.
That sounds very masturbatory. Like, he somehow convinced the drama department to do exactly what he wanted to do.
Yeah, it's really strange.
Was the script good?
I honestly couldn't remember.
I can't imagine the technical elements were any good.
I remember the girl wearing the Harley Quinn outfit was like a friend of mine, and it was like one of those things where it was like after the show, it was like obviously like kind of the elephant in the room was like, yeah, that girl was in like a very revealing skin tight outfit, and that was like all anyone could talk about. And it was just like, you were great.
Okay, well, is this the best acting? Is this your nomination for the best acting?
So, you do. This is one of the ones where we've gone to our social medias, our Discord, Instagram, Facebook, and put the call out to you, the listener, to see what you think is the best acting. And it's kind of whatever your interpretation of that question is, because it's obviously, like I said, a bananas question to ask. And
deliberately vague.
Exactly, deliberately vague. And we've done a few of these in the past. We've talked about what's the best sequel, what's the best song, what's the best prequel. And the idea, hopefully, is that we are going to, through our discussion of everyone's suggestions and some that we've brought to the table ourselves, that we're going to be able to eliminate dozens of performances at a time by discounting things based on arbitrary rules we're going to set forth that, no, the best acting can't be yada yada. And then eventually, hopefully, crown what we think is the best acting, whatever that may mean. So Brent from Texas actually put it quite well when he commented on the Discord when we put the call out, saying it's an insane, and then he crossed that out and said, amazing question. When you think about it, what is acting and how do you measure its quality? Is it the most like something else that someone can portray, i.e. who is the truest interpretation of the character, or is it who moved the farthest from themselves to portray a character who abandoned their own identity to pursue someone else's? And I think that's kind of the question that's going to probably reoccur a lot, is that because I guess this is the two different schools of thought. It's like either you're completely transforming to a character that's nothing like yourself, or do we need to have a performance that has so much truth that you're bringing into the character from your own life? Stanislavskian, I believe.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting because that sort of way of conceiving of the differences in acting style is like kind of a fundamental schism within the profession itself, right? Is like there's kind of two thoughts that exist, and one is that like character exists or like character doesn't exist, like either
right.
You're just yourself always when you're playing a character, or you're attempting to create this fictional person from the page and bring them flesh and blood to life.
What are you guys best at out of those two methods?
Both of them. Everything. I am the best actor.
You are an actor.
And Aaron's the best actor. That's why we got him.
Exactly.
I feel like I can convincingly sound like myself while acting, but as soon as I've have to like do any kind of like, stepping into the role of another character is where I tend to struggle. But I can act as AJ from Cult Popture pretty easily, I think.
Yeah, I think I would say that I probably more naturally align with the idea of, I guess you'd say it's sort of vaguely Stanislavski of like character existing, or like, moving away from yourself in order to portray a character.
Do you want to just give a quick rundown of what we mean by Stanislavski?
So Stanislavski was a Russian, Konstantin Stanislavski was a Russian theater director and sort of theater, I want to say ideas man, because the actual word isn't coming to mind. A thinker about theater and acting. Yeah, a philosopher, if you will, from Russia, from the basically, I think his career spanned kind of the late 1800s to the sort of first part of the 1900s, and a lot of his ideas kind of formed the basis, basically, of a lot of Western American ideas about acting and screen acting and ways of thinking about acting, basically. And I guess, he kind of had a lot of different thoughts about acting throughout his life, but the one that's sort of taught in New Zealand schools and in the curriculum is sort of about, like what can you do to your voice or your body or the way you move or the way your character speaks in order to shift yourself from, who you are in your everyday life to a character who's written on a page, and how do you bring that to life?
Yeah, and so the idea we kind of hear of like method acting, that's a Stanislavski thing, right?
Yeah, it was a sort of extension of Stanislavski. So it's almost, I would say it's potentially probably more American in that sense.
Right.
That there were several practitioners in the sort of 1940s or 50s who saw Stanislavski's work and like learnt from him and sort of took it one step further, of this idea of method acting being the fact that you take on the characteristics you've chosen for your character and you inhabit that through your like everyday life for the entire period that you're portraying a character. So for a film, for example,
The Joker.
you know, you might spend 3 months living your life as the character, and then when they stop production, you stop.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I know one of the sort of the first big people of the Stanislavski or method acting technique was Marlon Brando, who I think, you know, deserves a mention in the what's the best acting conversation. But one of my favorite bits of trivia is that, so A Streetcar Named Desire, which is kind of like the screen performance that it ushered in an era of like what we would now consider good acting, when you actually, you know, the actor is believing the character. That Streetcar Named Desire is one of 2 films to win 3 out of the 4 acting categories at the Oscars, but the only one it didn't win was Marlon Brando. So it's like the performance that changed the way acting would look for the next 71 years is the weak link in that film.
Yeah. You could say that of like film history though, eh? There are so many like films that didn't win the Oscar for Best Picture that, you know, are massively important in the context of history of cinema. One thing I would say, and it's also like a Marlon Brando story I really like, is apparently they were once doing an exercise in their acting class, and the teacher was like getting them to be chickens basically, and then was like, you know, talking them through kind of different scenarios in order to like exhibit, you know, responses from the chicken. And well, it was Stella Adler anyway. She was like, okay, and now imagine that there's like a nuclear bomb like falling on from the sky onto you people right now, and so like all the other chickens start like freaking out, and apparently Marlon Brando like chicken did nothing basically, and at the end of the session Stella Adler was like, why didn't your chicken freak out? And he was like, I'm a chicken, man, what do I understand of nuclear bombs?
Yeah.
Nice.
That's why he's the king. That's why he's the greatest.
It was his hat, Mr. Krabs. So I think, yeah, interestingly, actually, no one said Marlon Brando on our suggestions. But, I mean, you know, The Godfather's, his performance in The Godfather is obviously would be in discussion, and you probably see it a lot if you just Google what's the best acting performance of all time, which I've done a few times in the last couple of days.
And they're all from at least 30 years ago, and none of the suggestions we got are from more than 30 years ago. So it's a nice balance of like what the old school think is cool and what the new school think is cool. I was on Letterboxd earlier, and I was quizzing my flatmate on what are the top 5 films as ranked by popularity on Letterboxd, and he was like, oh, Godfather? And I was like, this ain't IMDb, baby.
Yeah.
This is Letterboxd. This is the site that had peak membership hit in 2019, and 3 of the movies from the top 5 are from 2019.
Yeah, I know. Parasite and Joker are the top 2, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah. There's also Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is 6th. The only oldie-ish on the top 5 is Pulp Fiction.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting. It's like a very, I think, accurate snapshot into like a Letterboxd user. But anyway, so if you Google what's the best acting performances of all time, the top result that comes up is a website called Movie.com, and it has Marlon Brando and The Godfather as the number 1. So I've kind of put these suggestions we've had into some categories. I think they're going to spark some interesting discussions. First up, we're going to have a few people recommended child actors. Being Close on Facebook said, I tend to be more impressed with strong performances in young actors. Antoine Olivier Payon in Mummy, Jacob Tremblay in Room, and something I rarely see discussed when regarding such a large budget fantasy movie, Elijah Wood is damn excellent in The Lord of the Rings. I don't know if there are many other roles where the acting is so consistently great for such a long duration, especially considering the films was shot over a 3+ year time frame. I mean, obviously, there's television as well, but which we actually didn't really get many suggestions for. So I think we could probably just say, what's the best movie acting of all time?
I've got TV ideas for my own personal bank of important acting to me.
Yeah, and I think that durational thing is a sort of interesting thing to talk about as well, right? Like, you know, to be able to sustain and also develop a character over, 5 years, 10 years or whatever is sort of a very different skill to what you do in movie acting.
Yeah, and I think that you find a lot in TV shows as well that the character and the actor sort of start to meet in the middle a little bit by the end of it, especially with sitcoms, when, it's situational comedy, and they start to bleed over into each other.
Well, I think then that like one distinguishing factor of something like Lord of the Rings as opposed to a TV show would be that it was filmed out of sequence. So not only is Elijah Wood, for example, having to develop a character, he's having to do it, acting as movie 3 Frodo and one day, and the next he's playing movie 1 Frodo, and so the difference, I guess, with TV acting would be like at least by season the character grows with you, a linear progression, whereas Frodo or Elijah Wood or any of the actors in Lord of the Rings had to do it out of order.
So you're saying that the best acting should be judged on whether it was shot out of order?
I'm saying that I think maybe an extra tangible challenge to just performing maybe should be part of the criteria.
Which
right?
I think is interesting, because if you were to ask me my favourite child actor performance, it's from a movie directed by Tarsem Singh called The Fall. Have either of you guys seen that?
I have seen The Fall.
So it stars Lee Pace as this stunt man who gets wounded, and he's bedridden for most of the movie. It's a gorgeous film, and
you should watch The Fall, Aaron. It's actually exactly your kind of movie.
Cool, man.
It's pretentious.
It's boring.
It's art house. Throwback.
But so most of the movie is like he's bedridden, can't walk, and he's telling these fantastical stories to this little girl who's. And then you see the fantastical stories going on as she imagines them, but the behind the scenes of the film, the young girl actor Katinka Untaru, her name is, as she had no idea that Lee Pace could walk, and essentially they just sheltered her so much that she, thought everything that was happening was true, and it's the best child acting performance you'll see for my money, which is, kind of talking about what we were just talking about then, that it's like, well, it kind of can't be the best acting because they didn't even know they were acting. Vinny from TPE on Discord also said Roman Griffin Davis in Jojo Rabbit is phenomenal. I think it is one of the best child actor performances I've ever seen. He is innocent and very vulnerable at parts and has excellent chemistry with all the adult actors. He has amazing character growth throughout the movie, and I cried a lot at parts. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that, you have to wonder, like, is it more impressive that a child is able to do this, or because it's a child, are they, being sheltered in some way?
Less self-conscious as well. Like, I'd say, I don't know, there's something about childhood where you're sort of less self-aware in some respects, so you're not having to fight that battle in your head of like, you look like an idiot, why are you doing that? Whereas a child, you're just like, la 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 la, I'm reacting.
How old would Roman Griffin Davis have been in Jojo Rabbit, though? He's probably 12, like still pretty old, for a child actor. So I don't know if he would have been sheltered in the same way as the young girl from The Fall. I think
he would have been 11 or 12.
Right. I think it's I think it is a good performance to call out, and I'm surprised I haven't seen Roman Griffin Davis in anything really since Jojo Rabbit. You'd think people would want to capitalize on having like a comedic talent that young, that kind of understands.
He's only done one other performance, and that's in a movie called Silent Night.
Yeah. There's a Keira Knightley film. Whereas Archie, what's his name? The kid who played
Archie Yates.
Archie Yates did a Home Alone movie, and it was like
the worst acting.
Okay. You were very cute in Jojo Rabbit. I don't know.
But now I'm sick of you. I will also just say that someone also said, Aaron from the Swamp said the dog that played Hachi in Hachi, A Dog's Tale, probably said that this is the first example that came to mind, which is... it's one of those things. They're not capable of knowing that they're doing a good performance. So I don't think that should be considered the best acting. I will also say, just Ben Close also pointed out highlighted Jacob Tremblay in Room, and while that's a fantastic performance, Brie Larson in Room is probably what I would, one of the ones I put my name into the ring for what I think is the best acting. So I think she's incredible in that movie. And that was before she got all woke and, called for genocide of men.
No, it's okay. We can make fun of her now because she's into NFTs and crypto. So she's actually crossed the entire spectrum of like defense from the left to condemnation from the left. So it's all good.
There is a thing in kind of acting where a lot of times performances are better as a result of like acting opposite children, because you're less focused on your own performance and you're more focused on like trying to help this other person. So it's sort of like there's a really famous example in New Zealand of do you guys know who Bruno Lawrence is?
Yeah, I was gonna put I would love to mention Bruno Lawrence.
I know Bruno Mars.
I'm familiar with the singer Bruno Mars.
This is a great example. I know what you're going to say. It's a great example. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the movie's called?
Let me find out for you.
Is it? It's like last. It's about him basically being one of the last people on Earth, though, right?
The Quiet Earth.
Yeah, Quiet Earth. That's the one.
That's not the one where he talks to the kid, though.
Oh, that's a different movie. Okay, I apologize. But anyway, the scene is basically his child's birthday. And the whole scene kind of just revolves around, like, you can see very clearly Bruno Lawrence trying to get a good performance out of this person. And so, he sort of loses himself in the role of father looking after child. And it's like it's often talked about as one of like the most amazing performances by a New Zealand actor ever. And it's like just real good because he was trying to elicit a performance from someone else, and so lost himself in the moment rather than being like, okay, I need to look here, etc.
The Quiet Earth he is really good in as well. He does a speech about being the last man on Earth, and I often will just rewatch that scene because I think it's a stunning, very theatrical, it almost feels like a stage play kind of performance, and I really like that scene as well. I'm glad you brought up Bruno Lawrence. Hell yeah. Well, we need more Kiwi representation in this.
I'm pretty sure they interviewed Anthony Hopkins once, and they were like, who's the best actor you ever acted with? And he was like, Bruno Lawrence.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah. I think it was Anthony Hopkins.
They're in Spotswood together.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
Nice.
Yeah. Great sort of, I would say deep cut, but
Smash Palace is the movie you're talking about. Sorry,
that's the one.
One person that I think what's the best acting, the conversation needs to reference is a guy by the name of Nicolas Cage. There's an entire Community episode devoted to whether or not he's a good actor. And yeah, so a few people, I'll just read out the comments from people. David Searle on Facebook simply put anything with Nicolas Cage. Tamar Tabor on Discord said Nick Cage in 90% of his filmography. Dude commits to everything with 110% of his energy, especially once called to attention his performances in Kick-Ass and Pig required pretty different approaches despite the theoretically similar character archetypes, i.e. middle-aged stoic white guy traumatized by the death of his wife that copes with it by obsessing over a hobby at the expense of his other relationships in life, which speaks to how he can get into the head of both the character and the director. And Craig from TP:E said, absolutely agree, he might be the best actor currently working. His films are wildly variable quality-wise, but he absolutely commits to every role, no matter how dumb the writing or direction is. Left Behind is 100% a terrible film, but he is staggeringly good in it, and in a role that he took on as a favour to his brother, no less.
I mean, that's a good argument for best actor, or best acting is like, even when you're in a dog shit movie, committing 100%. And I think
respecting the text.
Yeah, I think commitment is the difference between good acting and bad acting. I think what's so striking about seeing a good performance in a bad film, especially from like an auteur, is like just the evidence that they bought into the text, and it's why you can tell, certain actors that haven't committed to roles either in their later years or whatever, is like you can sense that they aren't buying into it. You can sense
the idea of phoning it in.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like Nicolas Cage is a prime example of someone who, for better or worse, will throw his whole Nicholas Cussy into every performance that he plays. And like, I remember being in high school and thinking, Nicolas Cage, terrible actor, like insane.
We've all gone through
terrible. Yeah, right. It's a phase. You go through it because you think he's in so many bad movies where he just plays an insane person, and you're like, that's bad acting. And then you start to see him in good stuff, either that he's already done or that he starts to put out, and you're like, it's the same energy. Maybe the it's a different way of looking at acting. I can say Nicolas Cage kind of changed my perception of what good acting is, because
what acting could be.
It's irrespective of the text itself. You know?
Aaron, what do you make of the Nicolas Cage debate?
I really love that this is coming directly after the children's segment, because you go from like people who are unaware that they're acting to people who are a person who is incredibly aware that he's acting. It's an interesting one. It sort of brings up those ideas of like appropriateness for the movie itself, right? So I guess, I picked up when Asia was talking, sometimes Nicolas Cage is like, yeah, but then other times you're like, damn. And it's, he's basically giving the same performance or a similar performance, but it's just because it's in a different movie.
Nicolas Cage has like come out in just the past week and basically confirmed everything we're saying, by the way. Like he did an interview recently, like on the last 7 days or so.
Unbearable Weight,
where he's basically said like, I did a bunch of straight to DVD movies in the last couple of years, but I committed 100% to every one of them. Yeah.
To be fair to that, he did Con Air long before he was in tax trouble, so I don't know if it necessarily passes as much muster as one would believe. But what was I going to say? I was going to say that sometimes in my own experience, going like too hard after a role or going too hard after a scene is also like a recipe for a bad performance. Like going hard at something is not necessarily going to result in it being a good performance. Sometimes, going too hard at something makes it terrible, whereas just sort of like sitting in a scene and allowing it to happen will make it more interesting emotionally and make you more open emotionally than just like kind of pushing your, in Nicolas Cage's thing, weird Nicolas Cage isms. I think it also brings up that thing of like, sometimes people's mannerisms are just like, like kind of can be grating, and that's just who they are as a person, and there's not a lot you can do about that.
Well, that's kind of part of the discussion with Nicolas Cage as well, is that like, as good of an actor as he is and how varied his performances are, you are, I think, always aware at some point that you're watching Nicolas Cage and that that's the reason you go to see the movie. And like, part of me is almost like, can the best acting really be from like a lead actor type, like, or does it have to be from a character actor? Because a lead actor, your leading man type, some part of you, I think, is always aware, other than, in rare exceptions, you are aware you're watching that person. Whereas I find you tend to be more with character actors, that they really sink into the character and you forget you're watching them. But again, does that actually mean it's good acting?
Yeah. Who are we to say? The people running this podcast? No, I would not say it's good acting necessarily. Well, it's like, in an ideal world, every actor only does one movie, right? Then the illusion of film is upheld.
That's a great point to bring up, because Bliss, Oh My Dog, on Discord pointed out one performance that I'm glad someone brought up. It's not a film I've seen, but it's a film I'm fascinated by. This is from 1928's The Passion of Joan of Arc. I don't know if are you familiar with this? You'd be familiar with this, Aaron, yeah?
Yeah, I think you've talked about it to me before. I think only through you is how I'm
right. Yeah. So again, I've watched clips of the movie just to see what all the fuss is about. But essentially, this, which Bliss, Oh My Dog talks about, but this Renee Falconetti played Joan of Arc in this silent film from 1928, and to this day, almost 100 years later, it's still considered one of, if not the greatest performances ever captured on film, and she never acted again. and that was her only performance she ever did. And so it's
Give
exactly
her
what
the
you're
title.
saying, AJ.
Yeah.
But
give it to her then. I'm happy with that.
So this is it's strapping because it's quite a long comment. So Bliss on My Dog says, I respectfully nominate silent film actress Renee Falconetti's performance as Joan of Arc in the 1928 film The Passion of Joan of Arc. While perhaps an overstated answer in many circles, my personal belief is that hers is the most miraculous and perfect performance ever put to celluloid. Picture the impossible. Trying to balance a snowflake on the head of a needle. That is what makes Falconetti's performance so endearing. A performance that reaches the very precipice of fragility in its delivery. It's a great sentence. It would be easy in a performance of similar style to hers to overact or become hammy. Falconetti does not do that. She sits perfectly on that fine line and never crosses it, even for a moment. Perhaps that is why the film is presented contemporarily in completely silent form, including the complete absence of music or score. Her performance perhaps would be marred by such a thing due to its fragile nature. The raw, untamed, yet subtle performance remains untouched because addition could send it over that aforementioned line. I'd also be remiss not to mention her eyes, much like the eyes of Frodo in Lord of the Rings. There's another mention for Elijah Wood.
Yeah, Elijah Wood getting a lot of play in the Best Acting podcast. Did not expect that.
Her piercing eyes glow and stare into your soul, the eyes of a woman who has been broken and put to slaughter by a patriarchal theocracy. There are some claims that her performance is a result of abuse and torment at the hands of the film's director, pushing her to the brink, and other claims that this is patently untrue. I would like to believe the former, if only that because I'd like to think a human capable of such an amazing theatrical feat. After this film, she never acted on film again, as if to say that this was her gift to the world, to say, there you go, I'm done, I've peaked the art of acting. And indeed, it is perhaps poetic that the film was released in 1928, perhaps as a true last hurrah for the power of silent film acting as the medium began to adopt sound, and her performance took advantage of what a sound film could be. I'm extremely thankful for the apparently disturbed individual who kept a hold of the last existent copy of the film and hid it away in a silent asylum for half a century. Someone saw this masterpiece and held on to it, and they were right. They were damn right. So
the entire movie is on YouTube as well. I just looked it up. I feel like he did Bliss My Dog mean to say he wants to believe the latter, not the former? Because it sounds like he's saying, I want to believe that she was bullied.
Yeah,
by the
that she was abused.
I think he's saying the opposite.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a fascinating thing. And I mean, we might end up coming back around to it, but it's like maybe the best acting is someone who never acted again, someone who died almost 100 years ago, so we have no reference for what they're like as a person. And maybe these things can't actually be judged in their time period, and maybe that's the difference.
Can I jump off what you just said to talk about one of my nominations?
No.
Oh, no. That sucks.
No, sorry. I actually wanted to also jump off what he just said, so I think it'd be great if I could go.
The thing you said, Richard, about like not knowing anything about the person enhancing the performance, that is very similar to something I've and get your eyes ready to roll because the film bro is about to give a film bro answer.
Kevin Spacey in American Beauty.
No, that's very similar to something I've long been saying about Heath Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight. And I'm not going to necessarily say it's the best acting of all time because it's a very specific kind of acting. But
I will say it's one of the, like, if you Google what's the best acting of all time, it is one of the few that like even the most prestigious lists will have from the 21st century.
There you go. It does do similar, like it does it falsely. It's artificial, but it does do the same thing as Joan of Arc. And I've probably talked about this before, but like to me, Heath Ledger is so unrecognizable in The Dark Knight. He doesn't look like him. You never see him without makeup, or you
Except
do once,
one
but even that doesn't really look like him.
Stuff,
yeah. And he doesn't sound like I've ever heard Heath Ledger talk before. I've seen crumbs of behind the scenes footage of him, being in character. So I've never seen someone who looks like that break. He died before his role could be reprised or before he could be cast in similar roles. And it kind of has the same effect where it feels like the Joker in The Dark Knight is just the Joker in The Dark Knight and not someone
Heath Ledger
playing
as the
him.
Joker.
Yeah, which isn't true of, I think, any other person to play the Joker, or I can't think of many other characters in which that would be true either. So, maybe what it takes to be the best, to be responsible for the best acting is complete unrecognizability and then dying before you capitalize on what you just did.
Or retiring,
Or retiring.
Like Gene Hackman in Welcome to Mooseport with Ray Romano. So, and Aaron, did you have one of yours you wanted to mention?
No, I did not. But I think it's interesting to note that there are probably differences between what is required for silent film acting and what is required for like spoken
like
acting,
talking,
basically.
for instance.
Yeah, exactly. And again, that's a strain.
Yeah.
What if you have a weird voice? What if the actress who played Joan of Arc had a weird voice?
She probably did. It probably sounded all like this because she was from the 1920s.
Maybe that's why she never.
She would have done fine in the talkies.
I'm Joan of Arc, see?
I was trying to replicate more of a timbre than
Round me at the stakes,
than an accent, but I didn't know how to do that.
She just sounds like a newspaper magnate from the 1920s.
The year is 1928. I am playing Joan of Arc. Yeah.
So some people mentioned and I thought this was an interesting thing, that people just referenced one scene from their choice. Hopi.1 or Hopi1 on Instagram says the scene in Basketball Diaries 1995, where between Leo and the mother, where he asks for money, gives me goosebumps every time. Sorry, I'm slurring my bloody words tonight. Brent from Texas pointed out, I unironically feel like Stallone's breakdown at the end of First Blood is tremendous, especially watching it, knowing what a terrible character he turns into. It's incredibly tender and powerful. And some Luca on the Discord said maybe a rote answer. I'm not sure what that, presumably an autocorrect, but maybe a right answer. But Liam Neeson's breakdown scene at the end of Schindler's List. I think it's interesting because we watch Oscar movies for this podcast every year, and we quite often talk about like the Oscar scene, and is the best acting, like when we talk about the best acting, is the question we're asking, are we looking for one scene or one specific moment, or are we talking about an entire performance? Because I think that there are not necessarily like mediocre performances, but there are performances that only really shine in one scene. That's not to say any of these examples. I kind of actually, Stallone in First Blood is a great example, that it's like, it's a fine performance, but it has one really good moment. And I think we'd probably all agree that to crown something the best acting, it would have to be consistent through a project, right?
Yeah, I think I'd be inclined to agree with that. I think it's like any kind of piece of art, like if a movie's good for like 5 minutes, then it's not a good movie. It's a movie that has a good scene. And also, there is something about, I don't know, like the kind of duration of something slowly moving you, like as you're watching something, as something kind of takes you on a journey, there's something more fulfilling, I think, and more kind of just like good than, just like one moment of sugar high and that's it, whereas like, yeah, I guess I would say in preparation for this, I watched Dog Day Afternoon with Al Pacino in it.
Hooah!
And
that was pre-Hooah.
And it's on like a lot of those lists that we talk about of best acting of all time. So I was like, oh, well, obviously there'll be an Oscar scene. And I guess there sort of is. But really what makes the performance amazing is that it sort of he seems like a real person, and there's actually no real like kind of massive bravura scene. There are definitely like moments of bravura throughout the whole movie, but yeah, there was no scene where I was like, oh, that's it. But watching his performance unfold with his peaks and valleys throughout the whole movie was amazing, and I think made it a better performance rather than something that has like that's the Oscar scene.
Yeah, and I think you do get like, especially with what we're talking about with the way they shoot films out of order, that I think seeing a big journey like that, even if it's not necessarily, doesn't have like standout moments, I think that is so much more impressive. The kind of taking that example to its extreme, one of the best performances I think in recent memory is Eddie Redmayne as Stephen Hawking in The Theory of Everything, because that is like, not only is that an incredible performance, but the way his condition gets progressively worse and worse is just like so well done throughout the film. And then realizing the thing was shot out of sequence, that knowing how far along he needs to be in any given scene, it's just incredible. But that does actually lead me into kind of one of the next big talking points we have, which Scotty doesn't know on Discord said, "This is genuinely pretty hard. The best acting I've seen in a while was in Pam and Tommy. Lily James and Sebastian Stan fucking own it in that show. Although I think TV shows have a slight unfair advantage as actors get to spend more time in the role." So this is an interesting one, because Lily James and Sebastian Stan are great as Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee in that show. I just finished it yesterday, and The thing though that, and we sort of, in preparation for this, we talked a lot about accents would be the big sort of thing that's like, can you have good acting if you're doing an accent or if you're not doing an accent, which we can talk about. But I think specifically with something like, especially there's a lot of buzz around Lily James playing Pamela Anderson in the show, that it's so transformative. You can't see her in it. She's doing a perfect impression of Pamela Anderson's voice, and I think Sebastian Stan is actually doing really good Tommy Lee as well, but a lot of the buzz has been around Lily James. And, I think that it's important that a white man gets his day in the sun. But
it's not enough to do a podcast about best acting where most of the submissions are white men.
But I think that, you have... It's one thing to do an accent, but in something like Pam and Tommy, or you have like Gary Oldman in The Darkest Hour, or Jamie Foxx and Ray, these performances that are incredible, but I think it's probably easier to do an impression of an existing person, right? Rather than creating a new character. So something, even though I guess like the Joker, Heath Ledger's Joker, he's not emulating Jack Nicholson as the Joker or anything like that, but these ones where you have a metric for how good it is because you can measure it against the real person and see how similar they are. I kind of think that even though they're the performances that, and this gets me every fucking time I watch a biopic, that you watch the performance, especially if it's like The Fighter, Christian Bale in that movie, or recently Will Smith in King Richard, you go, those are some weird choices, and then you see the real guy and you're like, holy shit, it's exactly like him. But I think that, if you're just copying and you're not making those character choices yourself, I think that's one that I think we should actually disqualify from being the best acting.
Okay, but you are throwing out Philip Seymour Hoffman as Capote.
That was the next one I was about to mention.
That feels like something I wouldn't think you'd want to do.
I was going to say, tragically though, one of my favorite actors in the role that won him an Oscar would have to be thrown out here, even though he's doing such a transformative performance, and what he's doing with his voice as well is so different from Philip Seymour Hoffman's normal speaking voice. But I think that it's impressions are easy somewhat. Aaron, what do you make of this?
Well, I think blasé impressions are kind of easy, but there's definitely, undeniably, a massive amount of skill required in order to like lift these kind of mannerisms that you've picked up and put them into a text, which is like, you don't have like a recording of these people doing this text and you're just like recreating it. So there is, I think it's unfair to say it's just imitation. I think there's definitely a large amount of artistry behind it. But I think you're right. I guess in terms of like judging whether it's good, it's sort of easier because you can be like, is it like the actual thing or not? Whereas, you would say about building a performance from scratch is that, art is kind of in some ways easier to make within parameters, like set parameters. If you're put in a box, it's kind of a little bit easier to make art rather than being like, okay, you can paint with literally any color in the world, and having to like narrow those choices to be like, okay, I want this one, this one, and this one, and that's how I'm going to create my masterpiece.
Yeah, and it's like you using painting as a metaphor. It's kind of like, if I was like, paint me a picture of a house, I can tell you how much it looks like a house. But if I said, paint me a picture, it could be anything. And I think that's especially when art is so subjective, that adding some element of subjectivity to it, I think, takes away what we're trying to achieve here on the Cult Popture podcast.
Yeah, and if it's kind of like the difference between like ultra realism and impressionism in some ways.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
Also, I am aware as well that what I've just said also disqualifies Eddie Redmayne, The Theory of Everything, which I just praised.
I mean, also De Niro as Jake LaMotta.
Yeah, De Niro as Jake LaMotta.
Raging Bull.
Considered one of, if not the greatest acting performances of all time, along with Nicholson in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Throw him out.
Yeah.
No good.
No good. I think his performance in Meet the Parents, where he created that character, is a lot better.
We can, if you're wanting to keep Philip Seymour Hoffman in the conversation as well, like him and Joaquin Phoenix in that scene from the Master, I often show people when they ask me what I think one of the best acted scenes of all time is. The sort of the it's not Scientology, but it's a Scientology test. I think that's an incredible scene, particularly because of those two actors.
Yeah, that's probably the best acted scene I've ever seen in my life.
There you go. Well, I'm glad I said it.
Yeah, me too.
Can I tell you guys about a piece of acting that taught me how
that
to
I
act?
did that I think is the best?
I would humbly like to throw myself into the ring here as maybe responsible for the best acting.
The year was 2010. I was in my last year of high school, and I'd just written Batman.
No, I was actually in high school when I saw this, so you're not too far off. There's a scene, so I'm nominating Bryan Cranston, and specifically in Breaking Bad, and it's not the scene I think people are going to think of. I think if you say
Crawl Space
would be the scene people would think of in Breaking Bad as the Bryan Cranston putting his whole Brian Crussy into this performance. God, that's fun to do. But there's the scene that really woke me up to what acting could be is in the final episode of season 3, and I'll try to be spoiler light if y'all haven't seen Breaking Bad.
Because you've told me before.
All you need to know is that Bryan Cranston, his character is, it hasn't been said aloud, but he knows he's about to be executed by his dodgy drug dealing colleagues, and he got
into a pretty bad crowd,
and he's begging for his life to not be killed, and that's about 15 seconds long, and it starts with him being like, could we go somewhere else? Could we like acting like he isn't about to be killed, right to the point where it's like, let's stop pretending you're not going to kill me, and let's actually just talk about it. And the way he did it is he's just says, can we go somewhere else? And the guy's like, no, gotta go this way. And he says, please, I just want, if I could speak to our boss, if I could speak to him. And he's like, no. And then I'll remember this for the rest of my life. Walter White, Bryan Cranston goes, please, just listen to me. And it's this moment that just blew me away, because it's like it woke me up to the threshold between acting and being just reacting, right? Because and like I'm not trying to claim like I became a better actor for watching this scene, but you can tell
that's
now
for
when
other people to say.
when watching I don't know, I was doing drama in high school at the time, and you can tell the difference between someone acting pleading for their life, and it's just like, no, don't kill me, and someone actually like stuck in there, and I've seen it happen on sets I've been on where someone has clearly not acted before and then has been coached by the director to actually cross the threshold and inhibit and embody the character in that moment. And I think that is something people don't realize when they start out acting. And so, yeah, I don't know, I wanted to mention that because that's probably the most significant piece of acting in my life personally. I think that one scene.
Yeah, no, that's thank you for sharing that, AJ. I do want on the flip side of these kind of like life changing, especially single scene ones. A few people that sort of talk about understated performances, and this is interesting because it's, you know, especially if you look at things like the Academy or you know, whoever awards Emmys, that they tend not to recognize these smaller performances that are kind of less obvious. The one we talked about that was actually up for an Academy Award was in 2017 when Gary Oldman won for Darkest Hour. He was up against Timothée Chalamet in Call Me by Your Name, which I would put as one of my favorite performances, which is such an understated personal performance, but it still is a very, like, he's putting everything out on the line. There's Oscar-y scenes in that, especially at the end of the film. But Bill Pree from Michigan points out that I thought Miles Teller was fantastic in Whiplash, but people focused more on J.K. Simmons due to his role being more flashy. Along the same vein, Alex Wolff was absolutely fantastic in Pig, despite the focus being on Cage. There's Nicolas Cage again, who he points out was also phenomenal. Sophia Lillis in It Part 1, and Part 2, I just said Part 1 so that I wasn't just saying it. Sophia Lillis in It. Sophia Lillis in it.
Acting. We can do accents.
As a whole, I'm always most impressed with super believable performances over big performances, if that makes sense. And Scotty doesn't know, just sort of credits the entire idea of Jason Bateman. He has made a career out of playing the same character over and over across different genres and somehow manages to make it work in almost every project he's in. I think he's made his life's work to perfect the ultimate straight man character. I agree with the assessment of Jason Bateman, the Hollywood's best straight man, and he won
best in the business.
He won an award for directing an episode of Ozark, which it's great if you watch when they announce his name, he's like genuinely dumbfounded. I think he was shocked to be nominated, and like one of the most sincere, like, I wasn't expecting this awards, you'll see. But I saw an interview with him where he was talking about directing, and he said that, like, because he's aware, obviously, he plays the straight man and that's what he's good at. And they said, how was it transitioning into directing? And he says, well, my entire career, it's been my job to not have the focus on myself and to facilitate a better actor a better performance out of the person I'm acting opposite. So putting that into directing was a pretty natural thing, and I thought that was such like an interesting and like great assessment from him, and what a great like understanding of the role of the straight man, like knowing that you're not supposed, in any given scene in Arrested Development, he's not supposed to be the best character or the best performance in that scene, and it's his job to get it out of everyone else. And maybe that's the best acting, knowing when not to be.
I would love if this podcast ended with us crowning Jason Bateman as responsible for the best acting. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's a really good point to bring up. And while we're on the subject, Jessica Walter as Lucille in Arrested Development is one of my favorite comedic performances of all time. I think she is incredible in that show, and has always been my favorite character of all the Bluths. And I was really sad when she passed away last year because I just love her so much in that show.
I'd be remiss if, while we were talking about understated characters as well, that if I didn't mention Charlie Swan, Billy Burke as Charlie Swan in the Twilight movies. Incredible, impeccable performance, possibly the best acting. And
according to Richard Martin.
Which, but yeah, I think it's also interesting. Mike Noyes commented, this might sound like a silly suggestion, but Tom Hanks in The Burbs. It's classic comedy Hanks at the top level, and his mental breakdown at the end is great. Like, it could have been in an Oscar reel comedy, never gets enough love during awards season. I think it'd be interesting to talk about comedic performances, if anyone has any that come to mind or that they'd written down, because people like Charlie Chaplin, I think, said it, that it's like, it's anyone can make someone cry, but it takes a genius to make them laugh, or something along those lines. And yeah, Aaron, as someone who's chosen to make acting their profession, what do you think about the comedy versus drama debate?
I think, it's an interesting one. I mean, definitely drama is seen as more prestigious than comedy. But yeah, I mean, you think about, there's a lot of actors who a lot of the top tier, most loved actors kind of start out as comic actors. Like you think of Olivia Colman, you think of Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah.
Like a lot
Jason
of these.
Bateman's on his way there as well, to be honest.
Yeah.
While we're talking
Tom
about
Hanks
him.
as well.
There's something about like learning how comedy works, because I guess, I mean, I don't know that much about comedy, but I would say it's
you're
like
funny,
at the
Aaron.
heart of it's actually. Oh, thanks, man. At the heart of it.
Funny looking!
See, the timing there is what's funny.
Barely in time.
See, Aaron, if you knew about comedy, you'd have known that was coming. I think there's something about comedy and comic acting that's like very structural and very kind of time-based. So you understand the kind of beats of a performance. And so if you're able to kind of transport those to a higher plane of like, sad acting, I guess you'd say. Like those actors can kind of take it places that is like unexpected, or things that, your leading men or your leading people probably couldn't do because, A, they're not weird bastards who get into comedy, just like handsome people, and also B, because they like maybe don't understand the craft as much as some comedic actors do.
Yeah, and I think that you get a lot of great performances from comedic actors doing drama, but it's rarer to see the other way around. You see, like, obviously people like Tom Hanks or like Michael Keaton, you go back and you watch their early films and you go like, shit, this guy was really funny. And before he just pivoted to pretty much solely doing drama. But then, yeah, the performances where it's rare to see someone later in their career, like after they've only established themselves as a dramatic actor, to then really shine in comedy. Like Leslie Nielsen is the classic example, who did it so well that people forgot he was a dramatic actor. And some other ones, Tommy Lee Jones in Men in Black is great performance in there. But then even then he's playing with the fact that he's so serious and he's playing the straight man.
Yeah. Channing Tatum maybe is a good example.
Yeah. Channing Tatum.
Tom Cruise in Tropic Thunder. That's the one always people go to, like, surprised he was this funny. Yeah,
I also think that you get a lot of it's interesting, like Channing Tatum's kind of an example of this, of like and to me the best example is Brad Pitt, that it's like a character actor trapped in a leading man's body, where it's like your bread and butter. Like Brad Pitt's done amazing performances in 12 Monkeys, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But you think about, when you think of classic Brad Pitt roles, it's not like your name above the title starring Brad Pitt. It's like it's either a two-header or like an ensemble film, or he's very much the supporting role. You think of, like Moneyball is probably his best movie, where it's like a name above the title kind of one. But things like World War Z are actually not like his best performances. Things like 12 Monkeys, as I said, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, even Ocean's movies, Burn After Reading.
Yeah. The probably the most impressed I've been from a comedic performance in recent years, and I did bring this up on our last Oscars run from last year, is probably Maria Bakalova in Borat 2, a movie I love that I always bring up. I think that's my funniest characteristic, is that I always bring up Borat 2. But like, and jumping off that place into like Sacha Baron Cohen and this docu-exploitation style in general, I think is not only always very funny acting, but it's also very brave acting, because it is like, I couldn't do it, right? It's like you're trying to be funny, but you're also dealing with the social tension of doing this around real people and putting yourself in danger, and that's why, like, I think,
and still being able to make us laugh,
and making a cohesive narrative out of it as well. I think that's what impressed me so much about Maria Bakalova is just like, Jesus Christ, who is this person? Like, I'm used to seeing Sacha Baron Cohen do this, but like someone who no one's ever really seen in anything before comes along and does it like just as well as him. And I was so stoked she got nominated for Best Supporting Actress. And it's like a flash of what the nominations would look like if comedy was recognized more, I think.
Yeah. People talk about this idea of acting being like living truthfully under imaginary circumstances, and that's kind of you would have to say that some of the performances or comedic performances that sit in the ridiculous realm are sort of all the more impressive because it's like you can't surely you don't believe that you're this weird dude from Kazakhstan doing like a documentary on the American life.
Yeah. So
exactly.
would you say that it's living truthfully in ridiculous circumstances?
The idea of acting is not ridiculous under imaginary circumstances.
The kind of what makes Borat great is that it's like living ridiculously in truthful circumstances.
Yeah.
So to kind of blend the topic of Borat and Tom Hanks, though.
As we so often find ourselves doing. Tom Hanks was actually in Borat too.
Well, yeah,
you could almost see him, his performance from The Terminal, you could almost see that character there.
We've talked about that when we did The Terminal for our
my name is Tom
Patreon.
Hanks. I have no country.
We did The Terminal for our Patreon podcast and was basically like, holy shit, this is Tom Hanks as Borat.
But Brent from Texas on the Discord said, I woke up thinking about this question and my first thought was to find a good comedy to showcase it. Tom Hanks also came to mind for The Terminal. This is in reply to Mike. Absolutely charming. No big moments of flourish, but I never really thought, oh, that's Tom Hanks while watching the movie. I was completely sold on this oafish, befuddled Caucasian. Best acting doesn't have to mean most acting. Hell, Woody in Toy Story deserves a nod too. Is it worth mentioning voiceover performances?
I think in terms of like
we did a big chat about a silent performance. What about the opposite?
Well, yeah, I guess like it feels like it should be absolutely have its own episode, but also kind of unfair to judge it in the same zone.
Yeah, well, I think because Seth MacFarlane would win.
Seth MacFarlane would win.
And Ted. Seth MacFarlane and Ted is the best acting.
I don't know, just like the idea of like what's the best voice acting could fill its own. We could apply all of these categories almost to voice acting
silent
itself
voice
as well.
Acting.
Yeah.
The best silent voice acting.
Like
I also thought
Jack Whitehall in Frozen.
What does he do?
He was cut out of the film. Like his character, he ended up being like a non-vocal appearance in an animated film.
Amazing.
Or John Ratzenberger in Soul is another one.
He got cut out, or he just was literally a silent character.
Because he's, they use his voice in every Pixar movie, but in Soul, there's a character that's designed based on him, but he doesn't speak.
Nice.
There's you could go like George Clooney when he voiced the dog in South Park, and all he did was bark.
Most convincing dog. Hey, what do you guys think about acting in foreign languages? Do you think that
I hate it?
Just like, do you think that we can ever experience a performance like will it ever be as good to us if we can't
truly appreciate it? You're talking about people that are acting in their native tongue, but it's foreign to us.
Exactly.
Yeah, because obviously there are performances where people like even Stephen Yeun in Minari was only like really. I don't think he learned Korean specifically for that movie, but it's not his native language. It's his native language. He wasn't raised speaking Korean, but a few people did say foreign language performances. Mads Mikkelsen in The Hunt was suggested by Josh Monson on Facebook.
Josh Monson.
And among some other ones.
He's going to message us about that.
Oh god, he's going to be talking for hours. I would submit Yonya Jung for Minari, who plays the grandmother. Just in one of those incredible performances. And I think there's a specific type of performance as well, where it's the ones where I forget you're not like that in real life. And that's definitely one of them, that when you see her in real life, you're like, oh shit, that's right. Mads Mikkelsen on The Hunt, fucking incredible performance. Martin Field 74 on Instagram, who is my dad, said, so this is among a couple other ones, but said, in order, this is best acting in order, Patrick Troughton as Father Brennan in The Omen, 1976, Marion Cotillard in La Vie en Rose, which is in French, and Al Pacino in Godfather 2, which we've covered on the podcast, and is an incredible performance as well. One that it's a character. It's insane he never won an Oscar for playing. One of the all-time great performances. One that you'd think couldn't be outdone in the first one, but then is in the second one.
Then he does himself.
And also, actually, Bliss on My Dog as well suggested Christoph Waltz in Inglourious Bastards, which was. I think that's definitely in the conversation for greatest performances of all time, that he's in like 3 different languages. It's a character Quentin Tarantino thought he was going to have to throw out the whole script because it was an impossible character to play. And not only did he find someone that could do that, but ended up finding, one of the greatest actors to play it. Did you have a suggestion for this one, Aaron?
Yeah, I did actually. Have you ever seen any of Toshiro Mifune's stuff? He was like the kind of lead actor in a lot of Akira Kurosawa's movies.
Yeah, actually, I think someone may have suggested. Yeah, in Rashomon.
That wasn't the one I was going to suggest, but yeah, amazing actor, incredible actor. And apparently one time he like based one of his characterizations or his characters on just like a tiger.
Yeah.
Best acting. You didn't even know he was a tiger.
He was playing a tiger.
But Greg from the USA
actor.
said Toshiro Mifune in Rashomon, you could argue some of the choices push into overacting, and I'd understand, but I think differentiating the versions of the scene in big ways works to the film's benefit. It's, if you don't know Rashomon, it's one of the ones that's a bunch of people telling their perspective of the story, so there's slight alterations every time. Recently done with The Last Duel, I believe.
Were you finished, Aaron?
Oh, I was going to also bring up just like it's sort of off that comment, the idea of like stylistic differences between acting, and you would say that's in some ways that's kind of sometimes cultural in the sense that like Western acting has an ideal of what acting should be, and that's not necessarily the same for a lot of other parts of the world. So, yeah, like whether something being too over the top or too much, does that disqualify it from being good acting? Because, like, it might sit well within the reality of the film it is in, but is like, that's not how people look in real life.
Yeah, that's like truth of the text, I guess. And I mean, to get pretentious, but as well, that it's like, I mean, if we're talking back to like Stanislavski, that is a performance in a Brecht play any better or worse just by virtue of how the play is presented, because Brechtian theatre is a lot more like you're never supposed to forget you're watching acting and actors, right?
Yeah.
Are we just throwing out random?
Well, I was going to just following on from what Aaron said about the sort of eccentricities. Matt from the Snoke Jar on Discord pointed out an interesting one that I put in the category camp, which is Raul Julia going above and beyond as M. Bison in that Street Fighter movie is a performance that I'll always love, and that's one that people always point out as being like, this movie is garbage, but he's phenomenal in it, because like one of those things that, and I think it's what's what's best for the text is the sort of thing that I mean, yeah, he's acting circles around everyone else, but he's having a lot of fun. He's hamming it up, and yeah, I mean, I don't think camp or comedic even performances should necessarily be disqualified, because there's still, you're still they're still getting over the what's the word, like the insecurity and the self-awareness and just going full on and being able to do that. Not everyone can do it.
I'm really worried you're convincing me with this commitment to the part line as being like a crucial thing to the acting. Because I'm coming round to it, and it also makes me think, oh God, maybe we are going to crown Nicolas Cage as best acting.
It's interesting though, because I know that like Aaron and I, full transparency, Aaron and I, well, I was going to say we met at acting school. We actually met slightly before that. Also, fun fact about me and Aaron, I sat in front of him at Pirates of the Caribbean 3 like 4 or 5 years before we actually met each other. But
how do you know that?
How did we figure that out?
I remembered that when I went to see it, I sat behind this guy, Tim, that I knew from intermediate or primary school. And then I remember talking to you, and you said you went to see it with him, and I was like, you must have been the guy he was with when I was sitting in front of him. And yeah, this was at least like 4 years before we actually met each other. Which is fun fact. But
the universe was trying to put us together, eh?
Yeah. But I remember this being the kind of thing, and the way that you and I look at acting when we're doing it, is that I remember being in the green room, and it was like you would have a scene together kind of thing, and it was like Aaron needs to think about his whole life before he performs, like doing cuts. But it was like you would sit there silently, or you'd listen to music or whatever, and really take that time to get into character. I will be Richard Martin until I am walking through the curtains. And I mean, you pursued acting as a career, and I didn't. So, what does that say? But I've never really bought into the idea that you need to do that kind of method acting. I like method acting in the sense that it's like, if you're supposed to be carrying something heavy in a scene, carry something heavy, But again, that's just because that's probably just because I'm lazy. And it's like, well, I don't want to have to act like I'm carrying something. I'll just carry it.
Nah, there is definitely differences. Like, whenever I watch ads and you can tell that someone doesn't have liquid in a cup.
Or someone doesn't actually know how to repair a car.
Yeah.
Shut up.
But the liquid in the cup thing's like...
They didn't make me actually repair it. It's me turning away from repairing it.
Yeah, the liquid in the cup thing
learn?
is... Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a
so
safety thing, yeah.
Yeah, but they even... There are bean bags. You can buy little bean bags that they put
something
in coffee cups.
Yeah.
Put something in it. But yeah, I would also say that part of the reason why I need to take so much time to get ready is because, I don't know, man, it doesn't come as easy to me as it probably does to you. So
it's actually because I'm a better actor than you. That's
why.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, do you know what I think is actually the hardest part of acting, and what I would happily crown best acting too, is just fucking remembering your lines. That's the hardest part to me. And if I could just have the lines, I would be so much more willing to experiment and push myself and try stuff. But it's like both not remembering the lines and not having the discipline to remember the lines to actually like memorize them.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you brought
is what
this
makes
up.
it so hard to me.
Yeah, because I think a lot of these amazing performances that you kind of talk about as being incredible performances, a la the scene in The Master, etc., is that like actually a lot of those scenes have improvisation in them, and so what kind of lifts them being, from being kind of stagnant scenes of like people delivering lines is the fact that they've been opened up to the space where they can improvise, so it feels fresh and it actually feels like people are reacting to each other, because instead of just two people learning a script, it's like, well, I don't know what the guy's going to say next, so I got to be here ready to react.
Well, I think maybe that the best acting shouldn't have any improvisation, because learning lines is hard.
And because you're kind of cheating.
Yeah, no, to be fair, I've always found learning lines so easy, and I hate when people complain about it, because it's like, or when I'm working with actors and they don't know their lines or the gist of their lines, I'm like, I know your lines.
I don't know what it is. It's because it's the one part I can't just instinctively do. Like I can try different deliveries of lines, and I can take direction, and I can like attempt things. But when it comes to it's like doing silent acting is so much better for me, because that's acting I can do, where I could just be like, yeah, whatever. So it's all experimenting. It's all
working as a director though. I find that lines are so much less important than the essence of a scene, like Aaron's saying, that it's knowing your character so well that you can improvise in character, which there's a difference between that and like improv comedy, where it's improv comedy is more like think of a joke and then say it in character, whereas this is like, how would your character actually react to this? And
imagine if we crowned best acting to just the improv comics of the world.
Yeah, this one's for
the
you.
Friday night, late night improv from all over the world. That's the best acting.
But yeah, I think that there's obviously circumstances where it's like you need to nail this line because it's important later on or whatever, or But yeah, I think that I'm probably much more impressed by people improvising in character.
I've been reading a book recently about Sanford Meisner, who is like kind of one of the leading proponents of like character doesn't exist, you're just playing yourself. And he was talking about how the script really is like kind of the words of a song, and then the performance or whatever is kind of like the music underneath and like the melody and all of those things. So you think about like the difference between someone speaking lyrics to you and the like massive difference between that and a finished song. And so the art of like acting is kind of that, what do you do with this dry kind of thing on a page is the thing about acting, is the choices you make about this thing and how you're going to present it and how you're going to bring this thing that's on a page to life, basically.
Yeah. Right on. Another sort of interesting thing that I guess comes up with talking about like truth and whatnot is, and this I think is one of the sort of big things as well, is like that how well you know the person or their public persona, then seeing them in a film, and if you know that they're super different from that, does that make it better acting because there's no truth in it, or what do you want to say? But talking about people playing against type. Because we don't actually truly know these actors usually, unless we crown the best acting AJ from their ad, because I know he can't fix a car in real life. But what we have to work with what we have, which is their other art. So people playing against type is usually what it's often crowned that people talk about being the best performances. Heath Ledger is a great example as the Joker, but Huberdeau on Discord mentioned Hugh Jackman in Prisoners. I thought was excellent. Actually, basically everyone in that. And Matt from the Snoke Jar says Tom Cruise is absolutely incredible in Collateral as this cold-blooded killer that's basically a shark in a human skin suit. But if you were to tell me that that's what Tom Cruise is actually like, I'd believe it in a heartbeat. And I think that's an interesting thing because he's playing against type, but I think that's directed by Michael Mann. You take a director who understands why people are put off by Tom Cruise and using that to his advantage. I think that the Safdie brothers and Paul Thomas Anderson have done this really well with Adam Sandler. His best performances in Uncut Gems and Punch Drunk Love, respectively, are like, these are people who understand why people don't like Adam Sandler, and it's like, we'll have him play the turned up to 11 version of what people don't like what they see in him. So in Uncut Gems, he's playing just this greasy, slimy, disgusting,
stinky, a stinky man.
And then in Punch Drunk Love, he's playing this immature man-child. And Punch Drunk Love, although it's a comedy, it is like, well, what would a person like this actually be like? And I think that although it's playing against type, I think there's something really fun with seeing a director bring a performance like that out of someone. Collateral is a great example that it's people don't like Tom Cruise because he seems so soulless, and so it's like, well, what would a soulless person actually be like? They'd be a fucking killer,
PTA's done that similar thing with Tom Cruise as well in Magnolia.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is also probably Tom Cruise's best performance for my money, I'd say, in Magnolia.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I'm inclined to agree with this line of thinking. I was thinking about this earlier on in the day of like, there has to be some sort of like movement away from who you are in order for it to be like the best acting.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Or embracing who you're afraid you are. Right?
Yeah.
Such as the case with someone like Tom Cruise. Like something like that is more.
Well, there's a self-awareness, and there's digging into a darker part of yourself.
There's a part in Daddy's Home 2 where Mel Gibson makes like a sexist comment.
Good. Such a good movie,
right? and it hits in the film because Mel Gibson is a sexist man. So what are some examples? There's got to be like a quintessential one that I'm not thinking of.
Edward Norton in Birdman.
Sure,
playing
yeah.
An incredibly difficult to work with actor.
Where an actor plays the like worst version of who they supposedly really are, and it leaves you going, do they know that they're in this? Do they know that?
I just want to say, I'm very proud of myself for pulling out Edward Norton and Birdman.
No, it's great. Yeah, no, that's a perfect example. But yeah, like the example of like, yeah, like. I've seen performances, and none are coming to mind beyond what we've already said, where an actor has done something.
Kevin Spacey in American Beauty, playing a closeted gay man.
Where I've basically been like, I can't believe he agreed to do this. Like, it's so hurts his reputation. It so goes against everything people think about, would want to think about this actor, but he's like embracing it and taking people there and making them think about it.
Will Smith is an egotistical prick who is overprotective of his family.
In
Fresh Prince.
An independent state.
His family being Earth.
It's kind of like, in some ways, there needs a sort of destruction of the ego in order for like the performance to take place, which I guess is sort of what we also talk about as, people shifting themselves away from themselves, is that like you detach yourself from your ego because you're like, no, I actually don't give a fuck if I look good on camera. I just want to give this performance, y'all.
Yeah, which is actually, it's interesting because although there hasn't been a lot of them in this episode, that quite often when you're talking about like the best female performances of all time, there's usually Charlize Theron in Monster. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but like these
Meryl Streep and Sophie's Choice.
Meryl Streep and Sophie's Choice. Even something like as a podcast I was listening to today, Caitlin Olsen and Always Sunny. That the performances that you really like, these are incredible female performances. They're always like, they're not concerned about looking pretty, which is there's all these problems notwithstanding, but it is like that. The destruction of the ego, that you're putting the performance first, and I think. With men, we assume, or we as society, not the three of us, that, with men, we assume they're going to do this anyway. Whereas with women, they're like, but women are supposed to just be pretty. And then so when they're not, you're like, damn.
Yeah. I think they were talking to Jessica Chastain about this because she just recently won the Oscar for Eyes of Tammy Faye. And she said it was quite a difficult decision for her to do the part because she had to wear such heavy makeup on her face like every day. She knew that it would like basically increase the amount of lines or like sort of sagging in her face. And, there was this kind of awareness that, she kind of has to look beautiful in order to like get roles in Hollywood. So it was sort of a gamble of like, well, I'm going to ruin my looks for this performance, which, may be well received. It may not be well received,
Yeah. But like the example, I think I brought it up last year on the Oscars podcast, is that Frances McDormand for Nomadland, that any other actor or any other actress, they would say, people would be like, she de-glamorized herself for the role. What an incredible dedication. But Frances McDormand's never, not that, I'm not saying like, oh, she's already so, but it's like, she's not someone who's ever really concerned herself with playing that game, and so it's an incredible performance. She won an Oscar for it, but the discussion around it wasn't just about how she looked, because she's never really bought into the Hollywood system like that.
Did you see the Onion article this week that was like, Academy condemns Will Smith for most violent action taken at the Oscars since Frances McDormand gunned down 43 in 1996? It's funny.
That is funny.
It didn't actually happen, in case anyone's wondering what that's talking about.
Right, so it was just a lie then.
It was just a lie. Just as acting. The best acting is actually from the Onion.
From the Onion article, yeah.
I'm wondering if the quintessential example I was thinking of is maybe Adam Sandler in Funny People, which I'm not saying is a good performance. It's more has Adam Sandler seen Funny People?
It's like, do you know why people hate you? So the last kind of, I would say, category that I was able to sort of put these into, I'll do the shitpost first. Some people just said, that one's _Phil Parks on Instagram said, Will slapping Chris, shrugging shoulders. Scott Brown on Facebook said, not Jared Leto. Neither of those very helpful, but thank you for those.
That does contrast against Artuno's post on the Discord, where they said, in all seriousness, there's many examples we can go off. The more recent ones that comes to mind are Jared Leto and The Dark Knight. And then upon questioning, replied, Jared Leto is amazing, what are you talking about? But luckily, before anyone could explode, said, I'm kidding, I'm stoned at the moment. Thank you for correcting me.
They also pointed out Leonardo DiCaprio and Django, who famously cut his hand, but
he wins.
Acting.
He wins. He wins.
Acting, Richard.
He kept acting.
Christopher John Maruka on Instagram said what I presume is a shitpost, Vin Diesel and Triple X because he performed his own stunts. But I do think, though, the performing your own stunts thing is an interesting talking point because... Yeah, it's like, is that better acting, like that full willingness to put your life on the line for your stunts? I mean, obviously Tom Cruise, I would say, is like the king of this, that it's, seems to value an entertaining stunt over his own life to no end. On the flip side of this, though, however, you have Danny Trejo, who refuses to do his own stunt. Well, doesn't refuse, he doesn't do his own stunts, saying, I don't need to prove that I have cojones just to so like put my life on the line, because he understands that if I get hurt and I'm the lead in a film, that shuts down the film for weeks. It's someone's job to do that. So if they get hurt, it's their job. Which, I think is just an interesting talking point. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting that I was like, well, this is obviously a shitpost. And I was like, well, actually, the actually risking life and limb, is that better acting?
And it's but also you got to think that probably a movie where you're doing stunts is largely unlikely to land you an Oscar, except for probably The Dark Knight or something like that. But like, does it
which barely lands you an Oscar?
Yeah.
You have to
It's
die.
a superhero movie that was undernominated, and it feels like by acknowledging stunts, though, we're dangerously close to giving Tom Cruise the crown for best acting. Because he'll be the one that's probably done, probably most famous for doing his own stunts.
One that I'm the last sort of category I said that I've got that I was able to group more than one comment into that I think is interesting talking about is like specificities, and so because this is one thing that I think that you tend to stay with you about a performance. So Sam Stanley on Facebook says, having various mental impairments myself, portrayals of them particularly stand out to me, like when Forrest Gump realizes he's a father to Joaquin's demonstration of tics as the Joker, which there's obviously...
there should be a comma in there.
Should be a comma, but that's a very funny thing. Like, my favorite moment of Forrest Gump is when he realized that his son is Joaquin's demonstration of tics as the Joker.
Can I go and play with him? Is he The Joker.
I feel voice acting gets overlooked, such as Amy Poehler's range in Inside Out or Steve Bloom in Cowboy Bebop. We've talked about voice acting a little bit. And then, Mike Noyes on the Discord. This is sort of both, but Naomi Watts in Mulholland Drive, which she goes to the audition and acts with the creepy old actor. When the film starts, it feels like she's not a good actor, but as the film goes on, you realize it's all about specific choices, and it all works so well. One of the sort of talking about specificities of an actor, who was it before mentioned it, Huberto on Discord mentioned Hugh Jackman in Prisoners, that Jake Gyllenhaal in Prisoners is some of the most specific choices as an actor that I've seen, and that character just stuck with me so much. It's like the way he blinks his eyes and the whole the cadence of his voice was completely changed. It's like he still sounds like Jake Gyllenhaal, but it's like the rhythm of his voice has such a specificity to it. And also Jake Gyllenhaal on Nightcrawler as well is worth a shout out.
Yeah. And Prisoners, I feel like Jake Gyllenhaal's performance in that is evidence of a person who's lived an entire life and wasn't just conceived as a character for the film. Like like you say, the way he blinks and the way he talks feels like it's like because of something that happened to him in childhood.
It's lived in. Yeah.
It feels lived in. Craig from TPE also said, this is such a Craig answer, but Cheryl Lee's performance in Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me is some of the most powerful raw acting ever filmed. It is a breathtaking, intense, and harrowing portrayal of an absolutely tragic character, which has only grown more powerful over the past 30 years. Incredible. So that's the Laura Palmer from Twin Peaks. The girl who they find murdered in the first episode, but is a lot of incredible performances from her across the series. I'll
just go through the rest of the comments we had, and then we can have kind of a general discussion about what we've learned, I think. So Cheese on Discord said Denzel and Malcolm X. Zek from Southeast England said ScarJo and Adam Driver and Marriage Story were fantastic. Huberto agreed, her and Jojo Rabbit too, I thought, her being Scarlett Johansson. Also, Willem Dafoe and Boondock Saints, which is a really interesting choice that fits, I guess, more into the camp category. But there's that great soundbite of Willem Dafoe talking about his character in Boondock Saints being like, he's gay and he likes classical music, and there's just so many things that are interesting about him. And it's like, clearly,
it took off on TikTok.
this garbage film he doesn't give a shit about, but it's Willem Dafoe, so it's like he does care about it. But it's like, what drew you to this character, or what makes this character so interesting? It's like he's gay and he likes classical music.
Isn't it funny that so Zeke from Southeast England said ScarJo and Adam Driver and Marriage Story were fantastic. Huberto, as you said, Richard, replied with her and Jojo Rabbit too, I thought. And you specified he's talking about ScarJo, but she's also in a movie called Her, where she plays the titular her. So like it almost reads like Huberto just thinks that that Scarlett Johansson's name is
Hugh
her.
Jackman Wolverine.
Wolverine and Jojo Rabbit.
In The Prestige, Cheese also said Dafoe and Pattinson in The Lighthouse.
That's very big acting.
General Bison on Instagram, which I actually think is a reference to the Street Fighter character played by Raul Julia, says, my all-time favorite performance is Ben Kingsley in Sexy Beast. That role is transformational. If you haven't seen it, pop it in and prepare to be both transfixed and terrified by his character. Amazing film in many aspects, but Kingsley really makes it an all-time favorite of mine. I've only seen clips of that film. We were shown it at film school, but maybe I should watch the whole thing. Greg from the USA says, I love Malcolm McDowell in A Clockwork Orange. I think it's easy to play narcissistic in broad strokes, but there's a lot of specificity to his character. Maybe I should put those under specificities. Choices that he's especially come across in the latter half of the movie to make it so memorable. It's kind of a cop-out to go Shakespeare, but Richard Brere's...
This is a different thought, sorry.
Yeah, so... I'll just put an enter in there. It's kind of a cop-out to go Shakespeare, but Richard Brere's as Leonardo in Much Ado About Nothing is just such a joy to watch. Aside from, I think, a little bit too much on the let her die line, everything he does in that movie just feels so convincing and lived in. If you have to put a caveat, it's not the best acting. I'm sorry, Greg. Kathy Bates in Misery is just so good. Just genuinely chilling in such a believable way. This distillation of American religious frenzy and hypocrisy without turning from a character into a metaphor.
It's a good line.
Yeah, the Almighty Watcher agreed that in the same vein, whoever played Dolores Umbridge, that was Imelda Staunton, did a bang up job. And I think there is again, it's one of those like I said before, you forget that the person's not like this, that it's like ruined Imelda Staunton for me. You're seeing her anything else, I'm like, God, that bitch. Yeah, and that specific type of hatred as well for that character. Olivia Colman does it in Fleabag as well. That it's like the character you hate so much, but someone could quite easily watch that and not understand why you hate them. It's like that's such a specific type. Or if you knew them in real life, someone could come along and be like, "Why do you hate that person? They're lovely." And it's like, no, you don't understand. You don't see it.
Well, it's the same with Nurse Ratched and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's
Louise
Nest.
Fletcher.
That's an example of a villain who never does anything explicitly villainous, but you can tell is the villain the whole time. I say until the end, I should say.
Yeah.
Did you guys have any?
Yeah, any other ones written down?
Yeah, did you guys have any other ones written down that you wanted to give shout outs to? Any other examples of what you think is
one
some of the
that
best
I
acting?
haven't seen but is considered one of the greatest of all time, and I'd be remiss not to mention is Sidney Poitier in The Heat of the Night. That's just like one of the greatest black actors of all time, and what's usually in one of the top 5 roles. That there's probably people listening to this that are upset we did mention it. One of the best, along with the Master, is one that I said I've point to it, especially the interrogation scene, as being like, this is the best acting. Doubt is possibly one of the best acted movies I've ever seen. It's Meryl Streep, Philip Seymour Hoffman, and Viola Davis. Amy Adams is in it as well, but she doesn't particularly stand out, which is against the other 3. Viola Davis appears in exactly 2 scenes, and I think won an Oscar for it, or at least it was nominated for it. And yeah, Meryl Streep and Philip Seymour Hoffman are just both incredible in that film.
What about you, Aaron? Are there any more that you wanted to mention?
I did want to bring up maybe a couple of television performances, just because I think we may be a bit light on TV stuff. So I did want to bring up James Gandolfini.
Raj and the Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, exactly. Apparently, actually, I was having a conversation with someone once, and he said that he saw the actor who plays that character live in a stage show, and he was like, "It's the best performance I've ever seen in my life."
It's the best acting I've ever seen.
Yeah, so
maybe the best acting is acting that's so good it makes people think you're a shit actor and it ruins your career even though you're a good actor.
Yeah, there you go, man. There you go. Plus, he's sort of going for the Joan of Arc thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to stay on Big Bang Theory actors, the Wolowitz from Big Bang Theory, his Simon Helberg in Annette blew me away, his performance in that. Anyway, sorry,
Aaron. Yes, so probably first up I would say James Gandolfini in
The Sopranos.
The Sopranos.
Unless he was in some other show.
Killing them softly. No, in The Sopranos. And also, you guys have seen The Wire, eh?
Yeah, I've got a Wire mention, yeah.
Have you got Michael Kenneth Williams as oh God, what is his character's name? Omar. The man.
No, that's probably better. I put Idris Elba as Stringer Bell, but
I put
Omar's
a
probably
stupid
better.
Oh, such an idiot.
No, Omar's great. Yeah. Nice. I also put in this is a bit of a left of field example. I thought that Leslie Odom Jr. as Aaron Burr in Hamilton is probably the thing that I'm most moved by from that play /
so good, man.
filmed play.
So good.
And you said to me, Richard, that he's the one that won all the acting awards.
Well, yeah, it was one of those things that you because for the Tonys, it was lead actor. It's one of the only awards Tony that Hamilton didn't win because it was Lin-Manuel Miranda lost to Leslie Odom Jr. In the lead actor category. And I guess if you just listen, you know the lore surrounding Hamilton, you're like, damn, they didn't give him one of his many awards he was nominated for. You watch it, you're like, oh fuck, it's because he's massively outshone by this guy.
Yeah.
I also really like Essie Davis and the Babadook. Have you guys seen the Babadook?
Oh yeah.
No.
react
No,
like
you
that.
fucking idiot.
She's a very stressed Australian mother, and it's a performance that's completely like it takes it from like a forgettable movie to like probably one of the best horrors of the past 10 years. I also wrote, and this is an interesting conversation, Terry O'Quinn and Michael Emerson, who play Locke and Ben in Lost, outdo all the other actors in that show. I rewatched it recently. They do so much. They're so much better than everyone else in the show. And like, is that the best acting when you are clearly better than everyone else that you're acting with, and you still give them the dignity and the class, and like.
I would put Henry Ian Cusick in there as well, but that's probably just because I love Desmond.
Absolutely. Yep. I also put Trevante Rhodes in Moonlight. I think is one of the more interesting, incredible performances.
Which age is he?
He's the oldest one.
The oldest one.
Yeah.
He's so good. Holy shit.
Because the spoilers for Moonlight, is that the movie takes place over like 3 different time periods where you're watching the same kid grow up, and the first 2 versions of him when he's like maybe like 9 and the second one is maybe like 14 are very consistent with each other, and then when Trevante Rhodes takes over as the character, completely different. He's as in his mid-20s now, completely different, and it makes you go like, what the hell is this? Like, it's not like, where is the character?
Are they not even trying for the last one?
Yeah. And then the events of the film eventually bring out that small child version of him in Trevante's performance, and it's excellent stuff. And I put off watching that movie for a long time, but it's really a really good just sort of case study of acting. And finally, I think Dev Patel for a few things, but Slumdog Millionaire comes to mind specifically for that was his breakout, but he's really good in The Green Knight as well. I haven't seen Lion, but I've heard he's like incredible in that as well. And I feel like Dev Patel's gonna like be one of the greats, Yeah. And those are my mentions.
So, lads, we're now at the difficult part of the podcast where we have to crown a best acting.
Literally, all I can think is Nicolas Cage.
I thought you were going to say literally all I can think is Dev Patel, because that's the one you just said.
Recency bias.
I mean, what have we?
I think
what
there
have
is
we
an
learned?
argument to be made for Nicolas Cage, genuinely. It is annoying because it's like, I don't want to just buy into the meme of it, but it's like, it is such a good, like, that someone, and it's the destruction of ego and everything like that it's like someone who is just willing to give themselves over to whatever it is, no matter what.
I think the only category he fails in, and I think it is sort of an important category, is there has to be some level of time between like the performances and you in order to like objectively kind of look at the performance.
Right.
So I reckon on that scale, maybe it can't be Nicolas Cage, but maybe that's also just me being like, no, it can't be Nicolas Cage.
Bullshit rule you made up. I mean, if it's the best acting, and we can't give out more than one award, because I guess not, but because like we've decided it's not just a single moment of acting, but like acting in general, who does the best acting, then it is Nicolas Cage. If it's like individual, what little moment from
maybe it's not a person.
Maybe it's improv the world over.
Sorry, my connection's fucky. I was trying to get away with downloading God's Not Dead in the background.
I know it is.
I've paused my God's Not Dead download.
He's not?
Well, I don't know.
True, I was very convinced he was dead.
Maybe it's not a person. And maybe the best acting is like we award it to playing against type as a concept.
That feels equally as much of a cop-out as giving it to Nicolas Cage, though.
Yeah.
Or the person with the broadest range. I do kind of like this idea of like acting, like, you can't award the best acting necessarily for a single performance, you know what I mean? It sort of has to be in some ways a body of work, in the same way we were talking about, like...
Feels like you bring us back around to Nick Cage.
Don't go too far away from Nick. No, it has to be a body of work in the sense that, like, we were talking about, you know, it can't just be a moment. It has to be spread over a whole movie, you know, or like it has to be kind of spread over a whole career. And it also has to show that you're able to move away from type or move away from yourself. And it's like, you know, if you can only do that once, then that's probably not as good as a person who can do that like 50 million times.
Or maybe is it like the best acting is in one performance, but we have to see that journey. So, I mean, one that wasn't mentioned, and you know, me of all people shouldn't be mentioning this, but Leonardo DiCaprio in The Wolf of Wall Street. That's probably my favorite Leo performance, and that's such a, you know, it's a classic Scorsesean rise and fall. But I mean, that's what makes Bryan Cranston as Walter White so great as well, isn't it? That you see he's so believable as just the fucking loser, but then also as a drug lord. Not that drugs make you not a loser.
Absolute cuck.
I mean, he is a cuck at one point in the series as well, and I believed he was too. But the another just also while mentioning TV performances, one that again I'd be remiss not to mention, I'm surprised you didn't, AJ, is Matthew McConaughey as Rust Cole in True Detective season 1. That was
give it to him. We got to wrap this up.
He was, you know, it sucks that he never won an Emmy for that role, but he was up against Bryan Cranston for Ozymandias, which is like possibly the best acting,
best episode of television
of all time, best episode of television, best acting in that episode, and so it's like like any other year, you would be a shoo-in for this character, because Rust Cole is a phenomenal performance, especially for the start of the reconnaissance when we didn't know what he was capable of.
Okay, pitching you guys that the winner should be Matthew McConaughey, okay? Because I was going to make a joke about how he pretended to be in shitty rom-coms for half of his career, as like he was acting in them. But what if the best acting actually involves self-reflection and self-improvement? And so he's talked about it. He literally like looked at his life and was like, I can't keep doing these bullshit
like, this is not
rom-coms.
All right.
And he made that calculated decision to try and do better things. And, you know, he's been in some stinkers since True Detective, but at least he's trying to do certain things. And maybe that self-improvement is the marriage of your real life and your acting career. Maybe that is what best acting ultimately is.
Nah, sorry, AJ. It's actually Daniel Day-Lewis.
Oh, okay. We didn't even mention Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah, my left
swoops in at the end and wins it.
Classic Dan. Have you seen My Left Foot, Aaron?
No, I haven't.
Because that's the one that's like considered his best one. He's incredible in There Will Be Blood. When he drinks Paul Dano's milkshake. And I've abandoned my child.
This is starting to feel very much like we don't know how to end this thing.
Oh, do you know what? We don't.
I say we just do it. We just award it to someone. I think
we give it to Billy Burke for Charlie Swan.
Agreed.
Okay, cool.
Okay, thank you for listening, everybody.
As far as I'm concerned, he did die after that performance, because I have literally never seen him act ever again.
Yeah, someone didn't watch Revolution. Was he in that show?
He was. But I don't think anyone knows what Revolution is, so the joke doesn't work for a different reason than what you thought. If you are pissed off with the result of this episode, then please let us know. You're clearly not tuned into the sort of big joke of doing what's the best episodes.
I honestly, though, I do feel like your argument for Matthew McConaughey is a good call, but I also think that Nicolas Cage is... I think the discussions we had about destruction of ego and fully giving yourself over to something and not being able to, and like that's it, like Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight is this as well, where it's like you lose every shred of Heath Ledger in that performance. I think Nicolas Cage, while I did say you're quite often quite aware that you're watching Nicolas Cage, and he does have his own mannerisms, it's like there is still that separation between the real Nicolas Cage, who's quite a quiet, understated person, really.
And Billy Burke as Charlie Swan is lost
trumps
into...
them all.
Trumps them all. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. If you are pissed off that we didn't reach an answer, please let us know. You can hop on the Discord, which there's a link to in the show notes, or you can follow us on Instagram
Maybe
or
we'll do
Twitter.
a part 2 that's called No, Seriously, What's the Best Acting?
Exactly. And you can support us at all those places, or you can email us at cultpopturemedia@gmail.com. You can also, if you'd like, if we did such a good job you'd like to financially support us, you can hop on over to patreon.com/cultpopture as well. And also, I think we'll have a post-credit scene after this exit music in this episode, so stick around for that. And if you're wondering what Film Franchise Fortnights is doing, we'll be back next week with the start of Season 7 of Film Franchise Fortnights, where we'll be talking about the God's Not Dead franchise. So, get ready for some hot blasphemy boys coming at you, making fun of Christians. That'll be next week, so get on that. And thank you, Aaron, for sticking with us for this long string of episodes. It's been great to have you on.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Let
us know if you wanted this debate more settled. And
we'll continue doing more episodes for the rest of time. All right, welcome along to the post-credit scene, everyone. This is a scene at the end of each episode where if you donate $5 or more over at patreon.com/cultpopture, then you get to give us something to talk about at the end of each episode. In this, the post-credit scene, Aaron's still here because we love our boy Aaron, so maybe he'll answer the question as well. What have we got, Richard?
So Dan Connell asked, there are a seemingly universal list of films that are considered classic or must-see. What are some films on that list you disagree with, aka anything on the AFI Top 100, Top 250 on IMDb, etc.? Just what's a movie considered a classic or a must-see that you disagree with? I think I tore into it already on the miniseries, but Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is garbage. I don't really like Vertigo. Which is considered the greatest movie of all time.
Vertigo's mean.
I liked Vertigo. It's not that I don't like it, but I still haven't seen Citizen Kane, everyone. So, feel free to rip into me for that. I find this really hard because, and I'm not proud of this, but I tend to not stray from public opinion for a lot of films. But I can tell you that the movie that the most recent, acclaimed movie that I didn't really like that much was Argo. I was like, I want to see them make a fake movie. And as soon as they get to... What country do they go to in Argo? Is it like...
Iran?
Kazakhstan.
Iran? As soon as they get over there, the whole...
She make movie.
The whole, making a fake movie plotline is dropped.
It's not important.
Yeah, and I know that that's what happened in real life, but you sold me on it's about making a fake movie logline, and I went into it expecting that, and that wasn't there. And I think that's a bummer.
Do you want a real controversial take?
Yes.
I don't like Pulp Fiction.
Is it because it's implicitly racist?
Yes, and only that. No, I don't know, man. There's something about it that's just I don't understand why people like this movie. To me, the dialogue is oh man, just
the best part of the film. Yep.
Stop writing dialogue so hard. It's like he was
It's not the best dialogue, but it's the most dialogue.
Yeah,
I'm regretting inviting Aaron to the post-credit scene.
You'll never get invited ever again anywhere. I told you it was going to be a hot take, guys.
No, that is good. There's a hot take. When it premiered, when Tarantino showed, I just realized my mic hasn't been pointing at me for a little bit. Hopefully, not very long. Oh my god, it's fallen off the table. When did this happen? Sorry if I have sounded like shit. For most of this podcast, but it was fine before. when he showed his like director friends, they were all like, "Dude, I loved Reservoir Dogs, but whew, you got a turd on your hands." And I think Gus Van Sant was the only person who was like, "No, I get it." But like, yes, all of his director friends that he showed it to were like, "This is garbage, man." Like,
well, in contrast to Gus Van Sant, I don't get it.
One movie that everyone loves that I think is bad is Rubber, the Quentin Dafoe movie about the killer tire. I'm sure I've talked about this on the podcast before, but like this is kind of like in like, you know, filmic, like true film circles, everyone loves this like pulpy movie about a telekinetic tire. That's actually not what it's about, and it's the super wanky like commentary on how things don't have to make sense and how absurdism is this or that. I just wanted a movie about a killer tire, and that's not what it is. They took a hot dog and they put 2 fancy ingredients on it, and now I just wanted a shitty hot dog.
Yeah, the similar sort of one for me is Swiss Army Man. Like for recent beloved classic. I don't really like Swiss Army Man. I do love their new film Everything Everywhere All at Once though.
I'm going to see it tomorrow.
Very exciting. Aaron, do you have any recent classics?
I can't think of any that I.
You looked very offended that I mentioned Rubber. Was that because you like it, or because you can't believe people revere it?
Or you hadn't heard
I
of
was
it,
like,
and that's your confused face.
That was my confused face. I was like, does he mean the seminal classic Flubber?
Don't like Flubber.
I don't care for it.
I don't care what anyone else says. Flubber's a bad movie.